Good afternoon. That was a bit loud. Hi, I'm Christine Perringer, and I have the pleasure of being your facilitator for this afternoon as we embark on the second block of Open Space Learning Day. Here at the Capacity Building Hub, we showcase efforts to enhance climate action through that capacity lens, and we have a very exciting segment coming up to do with sustainable cities and capacity building. We are using an open space approach, and just in a nutshell, it's a way of having a conference or a meeting of a group of people in which, instead of having speakers and then a question and answer at the end, instead, those who would normally be considered in the audience also have an opportunity to propose a topic for discussion. And those discussions happen with that flavor of everybody has something important to contribute. So this session might be a little bit different than other sessions you've been attending so far. And I'm excited to note that there are even parts of the negotiations that are starting to move in this direction. I've been watching the technical dialogue of the Global Stocktake, and they've been using for their roundtables actual people gathering in the round and speaking without prepared statements, really exchanging. So it's going to be with that kind of flavor that we engage with each other for the next couple of hours. Now, we're using an adapted open space, which means the Paris Committee on Capacity Building has already done some careful work to choose amongst many possibilities a couple of initiatives that had particular what were a particular interest to them and they wanted to showcase. So that will be the case this afternoon. We've got the UN University Institute of Environment and Human Security is going to speak about transformative urban coalitions. And then before them, UNEP's Copenhagen Climate Center is going to be speaking to virtual capacity building for carbon neutral energy systems and cities. So we have those two sessions. But then there's the possibility, if you've got something that you want to talk about related to sustainable cities, I'll be asking, does anybody want to raise their hand? And if that's the case, you'll be invited to come up and just say a few words about your idea of what you want to discuss. Our partners will have longer time because they've prepared. And all you have to do that is be willing to anchor a conversation at a small table, and then people will come to you. And I'll give you where are they? Oh, yeah. I'll give you a Post-it note upon which we write your topic, and then people will know to go to your table to discuss that subject. So, are there any questions before we get started? No. Okay, so I'm going to, in a moment, pass things over to our speakers, and then after that, ask, are there any additional topics that somebody would like to anchor a discussion in regarding? Okay, so now I'd like to call on my colleague Jolyn to speak from the UNEP's Copenhagen Climate Center about capacity building and virtual platforms. Jolyn.
Thank you, Christina, and hello, everyone. My name is Jolyn. I come from UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center. I am senior advisor, and then I also leading the technical team of building and district energy systems. So today, what I will going to present is the virtual capacity building platform. It is a platform based on the website. And then we develop all this methodology, tools, training material based on our real project, implementing project in different countries, especially in in developing countries and emerging economics. And then we have a focus especially on cities for sustainable development. So basically these projects are mainly for SDG 7, 11, and 13, these 3 targets. So here I start. Should I try it here or? But what's happening? Okay. Okay, here we go. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Yeah. So, oops. So, it doesn't move. It doesn't move. Sorry. Sorry? Yeah, okay. So actually I have a very brief introduction. So what is the energy systems in cities? And then actually what we have been working on is to implement these district energy systems to solve heating and cooling loads, and then also based on sector coupling, and then to how to use different resources like geothermal, like natural source, energies to produce heating and cooling, and then through the pipeline transformation, and then supply it to the building energy systems. So actually, if you refer to 3 main key components, one is the source side, that is the heating and cooling production source. The second one is the pipeline, transforming this, and then the third one is the building energy efficiency or energy system itself, and then we consider this as a whole system, and then the aim is to increase the overall primary energy efficiency for this in the city level. Okay. Yeah, so this is the idea. District energy system, first of all, they should use as much as local energy resources, and then this kind of resources, if you don't use it, and then you lose it or waste it. And then the second one actually is that they need to be cost effective and price competitive. And then the third one is that they should have higher energy efficiency than the traditional heating or cooling solutions. So here actually that is based on our project implementation experience, how to implement these projects. We consider the need to combine incentive policy, technology, and business models. In this say that we need to engage or provide training for the local experts, and then to let them understand at the very beginning of the project that how to design the project, how to identify the potential of the project. So here is basically the working flow. Actually, we're working on the national level, city level, and pilot project level. And then after we have the pilot project, we use potential, different kinds of business model or financial mechanism to scale up. And then actually the tool and methodology and material that we develop is mainly on the city level, which we consider is the most important actor for that. And then there's 3 steps to develop the project in the city level. So including the city level assessment, technical and eco fast analyze, and then finally pilot project. And then here actually is something that we no, continue. Okay, good. Yeah, so this is the project that we have been working on, and then we have different donors and then help us to implement projects in over 62 cities and in 25 developing countries. And then these countries and cities are becoming more and more and expanding now. So what we found the challenge are including, lack of local capacity building, especially in the developing countries. Actually, there's no limited expertise on this. And then when we try to identify the project, actually there's no data available or limited data available. And then the quality and quantity of the data cannot satisfy the evaluation. And then also these two things limited the how to design the investable or bankable, projects. And then also there's some requirement to bridge the gap between the national regulation and the city level. And then also how to give long-term support to local authorities. And then communication awareness raising, and then finally, how to standardize all this so that everyone can use the same standard, for data collection, how to verify the data they know they're going to collect, and then how to use the data to do the verification and analyze. Next one. So here is some of the report. I don't want to spend too much time on that. Yes, and then next one. Yeah, so this is based on our implementation projects. Actually, we developed this knowledge management system, KMS. It is a website-based system, and we will host all the training material. For example, this is the district energy, but we have other components. Next one. And then this is the framework. I think that we will go through it more detail after we build up groups. And then these different kinds of results and the different kinds of models to fit different requests in the city level. Next one. And then here is currently we develop 5 country virtual knowledge center already. And then we will show you more detail during the discussion. Next one. And then this is an example that we do it for China. Next one. And then here actually is the project that we implemented in India, and then based on that we developed this specific training modular for city engineer in India to implement smart energy systems. Next one. And then here that is the tools that we develop, and then these tools actually is a toolkit. The city engineer can use the toolkit not only to use it as a data collection platform so that they know what kind of data they need to connect and how big the data is, how detailed the data is, but also after that they can use this tool by inputting all the information, all the data in, and then we will give them the suggestions. And then also under this toolkits, actually building energy efficiency, district energy, and others. And then we have template of reports and then template of presentations, and then city engineer can directly use these templates or products of these fast rapid assessment tools, and then they can use it almost 1 hour or 2 to evaluate one project, and then after 1 day or 2, and then they can have this project evaluate rough analyze done, and then they can use the report directly to report to their boss or to present. And then based on that, I will stop here. And then there's a lot of more details. And then we can walk through the tools we developed, the website we developed. And then I'm looking forward to hearing your information in the context of your country. What is the need? And then what should include? What should not include? What should we do more in order to develop the online virtual capacity building platform? And hereby, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jolin. I'd now like to call on Simone from the UN University Institute for Environment and Human Security. Yes.
Thank you so much. So I'm trying to bring it. Oh, perfect. You're doing it. Even better. Thank you so much. So, yes, exactly. You can put it on the big screen already if you want to. Awesome. I'm already starting. Thanks so much, Jolyn, for this super interesting first presentation. I think I'll touch upon a slightly different topic. However, it's all linked to the question of how do we build sustainable cities? What are the bits and pieces we need? And as was already mentioned, I'm coming from the UN University. My name is Simone Sandholz. I'm the head of a section there working on urban futures and sustainability transformation. So you'll hear the word transformation a bit from me in the next minutes. But what we're really doing, what we want to do is to support cities and co-develop solutions where research, implementation, but also capacity sharing, capacity development are intrinsic parts where they're mutually like nurturing each other and not just being separate. And if you could move to the next slide. We're actually doing that also under the International Climate Initiative. Oh, I'm already talking. Can you move to the next slide? We're doing this under the International Climate Initiative in a quite large project together with our colleagues from the World Resources Institute, the IIED and IDOS. So we're 4 partners overall, but we of course have a couple of local country teams working with us, which are the local teams of WI in Mexico and Brazil, and IIED America Latina, and as said, it's funded by the International Climate Initiative, as we just saw that Jolyn's projects are also partly, so we're grateful to this support. And we started looking at Latin American cities because it's a continent which is already highly urbanized. More than 80% of people are already living in cities, meaning we cannot win this fight against climate change. We cannot achieve climate change adaptation and mitigation goals without taking into consideration what is happening in cities. And then this project started off from the idea that we then also need to look at how to interlink the different bits and pieces. Yet another project on top of these multiple initiatives which are already there has not brought us all the way that we need to go. So right now we need to really speed up, we need to accelerate, and we need to link climate topics to other pressing issues in cities, particularly in cities which have a high level of vulnerable dwellers, which face issues of climate hazards, natural disasters, which are prone to climate change very much and which also have a lot of dwellers that are struggling with it, that are losing their livelihoods in these events, in the short and in the long run. So that's the reason behind why we've started forming coalitions. So the title of our project is Transformative Urban Coalitions, because we felt we need to pay more attention to what is happening on the ground. There's a lot of projects already going on with community empowerment. We believe we are going one step further. We really co-develop solutions with local dwellers in the 5 cities that you see indicated here in the 3 countries, and each has a very distinct urban reality. You just see a little bit there on the photo. So we are sometimes working with people in informal settlements, sometimes it's a social housing area, it can be a historic city center which has been partly abandoned and not refurbished. So all different realities, but they share that they can be found in many different cities. So what we're doing there will hopefully help us also to transfer it to other cities. So if you could go to the next slide, how are we actually doing that? So our approach is a bit unique in the sense that we start on the ground by building urban labs. I'm coming to that in a minute. So we really build coalitions on the ground. We form this space for interaction. A little bit like we're doing it today. We're just convening, bringing people together, and then provide them the space to share their knowledge, their ideas, their wishes, how they want to see their cities in the future, and to then co-design some ideas, some smaller initiatives, but they can spark further change, and they can then also be accelerated to the city level. And that is supported by 5 different steps. Starting on the top right, we have a strong component on capacity building, capacity development. First, of course, we had to understand what are the pressing demands, and then we develop open source materials, which will be available soon, to support the cities, but then also beyond. We also felt we need to be a bit more inspiring. Very often, me coming from a university, what do? We publish papers. Who's reading these papers? Maybe only a couple of people who are from other universities, but not those people who should be addressed by it. So, and honestly, maybe academic papers are also not the most inspiring ones to read. So we have a strong art and film component in this project. If you take a look to your left, you see some bits and pieces of what we brought with us. This photo exhibition actually has been put together by our project. We just asked people around the world, what to you is a city you want? What to you is a desirable and sustainable city? And we yielded so many super rich photos and stories which were truly inspiring. And if you have a minute, you can take a look at it. We also have a film component where we do documentary films, starting from a global level, but also soon moving to the very local level to see stories that hopefully inspire change, that inspire people in these cities, but also beyond. So this art and film and a more artistic component we feel could be a way of creating new narratives, of addressing people and really touching them, so that it's not only something like super dry and theoretical. That goes very much hand in hand with the communication. We need to communicate better, and I'm saying that again from a researcher perspective. So this bridging between the different components and really reaching the right audiences, bringing the messages across to trigger some mindset shifts, to shift from we know we have a climate crisis to actual action, and to also know who else is suffering how, because maybe my neighbor living in the same city has a completely different reality, but together we can achieve something. So we try to provide these spaces in the cities, but we also have a research component to that where we analyze what kind of measures have been successful, how far. We're in the initial steps as the project started like last year, but we already have some very rich data collected, to then in the long run or in the midterm, in a couple of months, hopefully having the first results there to really know what kind of people, what kind of types of people can we address how. Because maybe I'm more relating to a certain narrative and someone else needs a different story to be told to achieve this common goal. So that already touched upon the fourth component, which is the very transformative research. So it's not research about people, it is research with people, which makes a true difference. It's not like us observing, taking away the data, publishing it, and no one benefits from it. It's doing it with the people. Of course, we do collect data, but it's being fed back into the whole process. And that, again, makes a whole difference because it also creates some ownership and hopefully, in the long run, also some change. But we also facilitate exchange between these cities. So we incentivize co-learning. We just brought together in the very first time, COVID didn't permit it yet, people from those 5 cities we're working with in one room, and they also visited one of these urban labs we are having, and it was truly rewarding just to see how many ideas were brought to the table, how they were already exchanging on, hey, how are you actually doing it? So it's not about bringing some information from a university, but also learning from between the cities and between different actor groups. And I know I've spoken enough about urban labs. If you could move to the next slide, please. That's exactly how we're doing it. So we're working in these 5 pilot cities where we form these actor coalitions across local people, local initiatives, civil society organizations, political actors from different sectors, and anyone who's willing to join us. So it's some open space, it's some open meetings, there's regular gatherings to co-develop and co-design, and to also think about what are the exact initiatives that city is needing at that time to drive the climate action, drive climate agenda, but always coupled with social change, with social justice questions, because we feel without addressing justice and equality for people living in these cities, there cannot be a long-term solution. There cannot be long-term sustainability. And, that is also where we co-create, where we develop ideas, and also where we take where we also observe and where we hopefully change and shift mindsets to really steer and gear these cities towards transformation or sustainability transformation. And that's exactly what we brought now as questions for the discussion, because now I explained the concept. We already have some super nice first ideas or insights that it's actually working. If you could move to the next slide. Perfect, thanks. So number one to us still is this role of communication and art. Communication, art, film, any kind of artistic expression to trigger change in cities. How can we do this? And maybe this is in a more long run, in a really very successful approach. Are there any stories that you can share? We'd be very interested in hearing about it, also your perspectives on what to use, what might work where, for which kind of groups. Maybe we need to do it with youth in a different way than with other actors, but it can be a truly inspiring way of disseminating messages, but also collaborating with different kinds of outputs. In the end, we're all visual, right? But so it's not only about paper and something written on paper. There can be other ways. And the second question, if you move to the next slide, please. And that, by the way, was how we assembled this whole exhibition. I should have said that. And the next one is, how can research contribute to urban transformation? So we are doing that in our project with a very transformative approach to research, which might not yet be a very common one. Very often universities might still sit in their ivory towers doing some research somewhere, also in a quite scattered approach. Which thesis is ever going out to the outside world? Does the information reach the right audiences? What are the formats that we need to do research in to pay attention, to really be attentive to this urgency to act in this climate crisis we are in? And that's particularly true for cities where you see a lot of research going on. You see a lot of, master theses, PhDs, research projects, which might work on certain bits and pieces. But how do we assemble this? How do we make sense of it? And yes, you can move to the next slide, because my time's up, I guess. And the third part is then, how do we capacitate each other, but also people living in these cities? How do we empower, not only around climate change, but also around other topics? Very often, urban realities and then people living in these cities, for instance, in an informal settlement, they might not want, or they might not need yet another problem to deal with. But the climate issue is very much linked to their reality, even if we don't see it in the short run. In the long run, we'll face even more severe problems. So how do we manage to weave it into actual learning and empowerment processes so that we can not only benefit sometime in the distant future when maybe it's not warming up that much, but already today, because it can, any kind of change, for instance, like planting trees, planting something, can not only help us in the long run, can not only help us mitigating flood impacts, but it helps us today already, because we could benefit from this greenery by agriculture, by some additional food supplies, by selling them, and by just making our cities more beautiful. So we need to pay attention to this, but how can we actually use it, and how can we also use this capacity sharing that is already there? And how can we take information from local communities also to other levels, because that way also we can weave this into capacity building and sharing, and to, in the end, achieve this urban transformation. So those are the topics we brought, but we are also very much looking forward to potential other inputs, and that's, I think, a perfect segue. Handing it back to our moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Simone and Jolene. Really stimulating opening discussions. So now, as promised, I'm going to ask those of us gathered here, is there an additional topic related to sustainable cities that you would like to anchor a conversation about. And all that would involve is by putting up your hand, coming up here, saying a few words about the topic you want to anchor a conversation regarding. And then, in a moment I'm going to do that. Just to let you know physically what's going to happen next, the capacity building platform, Jolin's presentation, that conversation will happen by the flip chart on the other side of those banks of chairs. And Simone's presentation about transformative coalitions will happen up here. So we're actually going to move the chairs. They're heavy, but they're two attached. And we just found this morning it works really well for actually having a conversation in a back and forth rather than being in classroom style. So, with that, I will now ask, is there anyone here who would like to anchor a conversation? And I see one hand. Would you like to come up and tell us what's...
Hello everyone, my name is Ruth Spencer. I'm from Antigua and Barbuda. I wear many hats, but I am chair of a Marine Ecosystem Protected Area Trust. Based on what the gentleman said, sorry I forgot your name, he mentioned he found in developing countries that there were lots of data gaps and like capacity building was low. But I found out that if the local people are not fully included, you will find these gaps, because I live in Antigua and our government departments do not really know who exists in the local communities. We're doing the SDG reports and they'd have 3 NGOs, and I said to them, there were over 25 locally registered groups in the communities. Where were these people? They're the ones implementing projects. So it tells me, even in a small country like mine with 100,000 people, the government doesn't know what exists in the communities. So when you go to a ministry to ask what's available, they may not know. So you wouldn't know how to reach out to the people, because I work a lot on infrastructure development and I go to churches. We have to build a community system. We suffer from drought. And I'd ask who in the church is available, who has the expertise to help us draw the plans. And I'd get 2 or 3 hands go up, and they'd contribute that voluntarily. So I know resources, I know knowledge exists in the communities, but there are gaps with the government officers knowing what exists. So I came up here to basically say, if we could discuss the role of the local communities, local knowledge in this process, I think that will add to the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So Ruth, actually, can I just give you this? I've just written how to increase capacity in engaging local communities. So that's a sticky note, and if you could just go to one of those tables and stick it in the middle of the table and gather some chairs around, then that will be a place where people can gather. Is there anybody else who would like to suggest another topic for presentation? No. Okay. So now I will explain the open space principles again, in that the most important one is, if you are neither engaging, like speaking, or actively listening, then don't go to a group. So I know we are all following so many other things that are happening on the planet and in this space, but this is not the place to do that. If you need to do that, and we all have times when we need to, leave your group, go sit by yourself, and work on that. We want to have only people in groups who are really engaged. I can take my mask off. Really engaged. And if you find you're not engaged, then go to another group or do whatever you need to do elsewhere. Because we're not really often aware of it, but it's actually a drain on energy when someone is looking at a device or is there physically, but not with their head and their heart. We want head and heart engagement in these groups. Okay, so I'll just remind you, if you are interested in the topic of sustainable cities, coalitions, everybody's interested in sustainable cities, but here in transformative coalitions, you'll come up here. If you want to talk about the capacity building platform that Jolyn outlined, it's over there, and you'll go with Ruth at the back table with the post-it note if you want to talk about increasing the engagement of local communities and strategies towards that. Okay? And so just go to those places and stand first, and then survey your area, and then create a good space for the conversation that you are in, which will mean dragging the chairs. One tip, they drag forward a lot easier than they drag backward. Drag forward, make it messy, make it a nice conversation space, and then you'll have 1 hour. So we will be back at 10 to 3. Thank you.